right. Good morning, everyone. Today's session's topic is so you want to use an external IRB. Now what? You both can just introduce yourselves and then you can get started when you're ready.
Sure. So we had a few people that have expressed a little bit of interest in how this all works with external IRBs. So we thought we'd get together between CSR and the IRB, our Office of Research Compliance, with Rich, and kind of tag team to kind of let you know what goes on when you decide that you are going to be using an external IRB. So go back here. I'm Kim Brunton from the research office and kind of one of the mainstays of central study registration. And Rich, I will let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Rich Karalus. I'm the director of the Office of Research Compliance. I'm also the person when you have when you want to use an external IRB or when you want us to serve as the reviewing IRB, you come to me. I'm kind of the quarterback of the whole single IRB process here at the university.
And a great resource. Okay.
I tried.
Oops. So we're going to look at basically what happens during the CSR process as far as when you identify that you are going to be using an external IRB, both from the commercial side. So if you're using things like WCG, Advera, Sterling, those types of commercials, or an outside institute. So especially if you've got an NIH study, excuse me, if you've got an NIH study, what happens as far as single IRB when they're looking at that? And again, the ORC process as well when that external. So we're going to kind of, like I say, tag team it back and forth to kind of let you know what each of us are doing, what is going on behind the scenes while we're waiting on things for you. Okay. And like Marshall says, please feel free to ask questions along the way. I think that that's probably going to be the easiest way, so we're on topic and we don't, lag anybody behind as far as like when the question is there. Feel free to ask that. A couple of the IRB policies that you really should be aware of are the HRP 906 and the HRP 908. And both of those are with regard to utilizing external IRBs. One is the commercial aspect of it, and the other is when you are ceding to another institution. The other one that we want you to be rather aware of is, and we're not going to speak to it in this session, but just so you are aware, HRP 909, which is when you have a multi-center study and the IRB, our IRB is going to be the IRB of record. So the procedure goes through basically the steps of everything that you need to do. Rich, I'm going to ask you if there's anything.
Yeah, I was going to try and speak. I was going to say that we tried to kind of cover all of the steps involved in these policies. So it's not just a policy. It also kind of describes the process that you need to go through. But if you have any questions, come to me. I definitely can answer questions on these. Yeah, they're located in the Click library. I think it's under the general template. But they're there, and please read through them before you consider using a single IRB because they may answer a lot of your questions.
Definitely. Thank you. Okay. We are going to start off with the reliance agreement. So as far as I'm going to have Rich speak to this because this is your wheelhouse here.
Yeah, so the reliance agreement sometimes is misunderstood. Some people think, we execute the reliance agreement, I'm good to go. I have approval to begin the study. And that is not at all the case. The reliance agreement, what it is it's actually just an agreement between the two IRBs over who the reviewing IRB is going to be. And sometimes that can be between a commercial IRB like Advera or WCG or Sterling or any of the other ones. Other times it's between different universities, University of Buffalo and another university, or any entity that has an IRB. So if you're doing research with any entity that has an IRB and you want to do a single IRB process, we will need to have a reliance agreement in place. If you're doing work with a site that doesn't have an IRB and is going to rely on our site, then we wouldn't have a reliance agreement because there's no other IRB to sign the agreement with. In that case, they would be added as just a simple external site. So the reliance agreement also will outline the responsibilities of the different IRBs, because even though we seed review, we still have certain responsibilities, and typically the responsibilities of the IRB that seeds review is to make sure that all study personnel in the study have human subjects training, because the other IRB will not have access to your training records. So that's a requirement of ours. Same thing with conflict of interest review. We're going to do a conflict of interest review for all the study personnel, and the other IRB would not have your annual disclosures. So we have the annual disclosure, so we would do the conflict of interest review. We also have some local context, especially in New York State. Obviously, being in New York State, unfortunately, we have laws that go over and above the federal regulations, and sometimes we'll need to add our local context depending upon what the study entails. So in order for a reliance agreement to be fully executed, it needs to be signed by the institutional official of both IRBs. Ours is Albertitis, and the institutional official from the other IRB. And there are certain requirements for us to accept another IRB. First of all, they have to have an FWA. So I go and look up and make sure that they have an FWA on file with the government and it's valid. And also that they have the expertise to do that. So most of the time, all the IRBs do qualify for this, but there have been several cases where we haven't allowed IRBs because either they haven't had the expertise or they don't have valid FWAs. One other thing I want to point out is we don't seed review to other IRBs for studies that are deemed exempt. Different institutions can use different criteria to determine whether a study is exempt. So I'll just use the most common one, for example. It used to be called checking the box, where an IRB will treat all studies as if using federal regulations. Some states don't require that. Some states allow you to exempt research that is not federally funded. New York State does not allow that. Actually, they do, but if we did that, we'd have to send those studies to the New York State IRB in Albany, and I don't think anybody would want that because they would be totally backed up and take a lot of time. So that's one of the reasons why we don't allow exempt studies to utilize the single IRB. So,
Rich, I'll just ask you to pause there. Mary, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess my question was concerning the entities that are businesses like Sterling or WCG. Is there any company that you don't accept?
no, there isn't. As long, like I
Okay.
said, as long as they have a valid IRB, a good IRB that's well qualified, we're not going to disqualify them. So.
So I have one more question then. So if you have a multi-center, say it's a retrospective chart review, but it involves 3 sites, would each site get approval then for their own part of the study?
If it was an exempt study, they would need to go get their own IRB
Okay.
approval. So yes. Well, actually, I shouldn't say I can't speak for the other sites. Other sites may allow single IRB with exempt studies, but in general, most sites will not allow exempt studies to go through single IRB.
And I just want to ask a couple of things here as well that may need a little bit. So the ability to rely on a foreign IRB.
Yes, I can speak to that. We don't allow reliance on foreign IRBs for the obvious reason is that they review their protocols using their local laws rather than U.S. regulation. So we're never going to cede review to a foreign IRB. We will allow other sites from other countries if they're willing to rely on our IRB, because there are some countries that don't have IRBs. It's not really single IRB. It's kind of we're reviewing for them. But in most cases, we're going to ask you for an official letter from their government or a representative that can speak to the effect that they will allow our IRB to serve as the reviewing IRB. In some cases, you may need approval from both IRBs so that to make sure that you're following the regulations from both countries.
Okay, so like if you are doing a single or a multi-center study and using the University of Toronto, that is, you cannot use that single IRB.
Right. Yes,
Okay.
we would not cede review to Toronto because they're going to review using Canadian law, not American law.
Okay. And the other is the local context. So the local context is established. And is it the other IRBs, particularly the commercial IRBs, to ensure that, that context has been adhered to?
It's actually both the IRB and it's actually both IRBs and the principal investigators. So it's all of the above. So in most cases with the commercial IRBs, they know our injury language and have our local laws. The more common ones like EBERA and WCG have our local context already, and will ensure that it's in there. But in some cases, it is up to the PI. If they know that our injury language is missing from the consent, it's also their responsibility to make sure that our injury language is included. Injury language is probably the most important thing. Each institution will have its own injury language, and like I said, when you're a reviewing IRB, in most cases you're going to understand that and ask for the local injury language to be put in each consent. Yeah, the local laws are mostly our New York State mental hygiene laws. So they deal with some special protection for children and cognitively disabled persons. The commercial IRBs, again, a lot of them have expertise in the local law. So we just point out that we're from New York State and they know the New York State laws. But other institutions, if you're using another institution, they sometimes may ask us to review the study for the local laws and provide them with guidance on the local law. So sometimes, although we try and get rid of the dual review as much as possible, a lot of other institutions may ask us to review the study for our local laws.
Excellent. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay.
All right, so I can kind of cover this one. This is the HRP 907. So this is used for commercial IRBs, and it's basically an agreement between the UBPI and the UB IRB as to what their responsibilities are. So, we don't just let you sign off on a reliance agreement and go with the commercial IRB and we never see you again. We need to have records of your study in our system. Again, we need to do COI review and review your training records, and we need to do that annually. So how we do that is we do that through the CLIC system, and that's why you're entering your study into our CLIC system, as well as the central study registration. Again, when you see review, it also needs to be in the central study registration because they need to keep track of the study as well. But anyway, this is just sort of the PI's agreement that they're going to maintain an updated file of your approved study and all the documents. So if you make modifications to your study, you need to add those modifications to our system so that we have a full record. If we get audited, even though we cede review, we have cases where they'll ask for seeded studies and ask us for the study submission, and they want to see a complete study submission. This could be the FDA, this could be our accrediting agency, this could be OHARP, whoever comes to audit it. If they come to our university, they may want to see study records for the studies that we seeded. You're also saying that you're going to abide by the policies of both the external IRB and University of Buffalo policies, where they where they apply. And we do charge a fee for doing all this because we do still retain responsibilities on your study. We, like I said, we need to do COI review. We need to do your training. We need to do local contacts. We need to do annual reviews of all of that. So that's the HRP 907. And I don't release reliance agreements until I have a signed HRP 907. So just so PIs know, I may have the fully executed a reliance agreement in your folder, but I'm not releasing it until I get a signed 907. And I do see cases where approval is held up because I haven't gotten a 907. Some cases we may waive the fee. So this is for commercial IRBs only, the HRP 907. And most of the commercial IRBs are for the commercial studies where, you're getting paid to do a clinical trial that the company is going to make money on. And that's the reason why we also charge our fee. If it's a not-for-profit study, and there are a few not-for-profit studies that we get that use commercial IRBs, we may waive that administrative fee, just so you know. All right.
In which case you will see when I send out the HRP for physician or for your PI signature, you will see that it is an amended version, and the line that of I agree to pay will be removed from that. So it's the 907 is that, yes, that agreement between the PI and our IRB, but that is removed, that obligation for the fee payment is removed from the amended, and we'll let you know that it's an amended.
Right.
So what happens in CSR? So first of all, what I do is take a look at the entry that you have put into CSR and just look to see if there's any obvious questions that I have before I proceed. And we get down into the nitty gritty of it, and also ensure. So I will double check that you have not started an IRB submission already as well, because we don't want duplicate records in there, and then everybody just doesn't know which one is moving forward. We have an automatic feed into the Click IRB system from CSR. So once we have established that everything looks good on the form, everything looks good on the form, we will hit that button. It will give us an IRB number, and it automatically puts some of that information. It puts your study staff, it puts the brief description, it puts the study title, all of those things automatically flow into Click. So whatever you put in CSR, make sure that you have properly identified what your study title is, because that is what's going to go into Click. Okay. And we have seen it sometimes where it is a little bit different from what the actual protocol says. So just to ensure that everything matches there. What I will also do is create the HRP 907, and I will send that to the coordinator for PI signature. At the same time, I am creating the reliance agreement for the external IRB, and I am sending that to Rich. Again, he said that he gets those. He gets them same time that PI gets the 907 for signature, and he may have that for whatever time period it is before I get that 907 back. So once the coordinator gets the PI signature and sends it back to me, then I'm going to send that on to Rich because he's already got the other. So meanwhile, this is what Rich is doing.
All right. So when I receive the reliance agreement, I just take a brief look at it, make sure all the information is filled out correctly, and then I'm going to send it off to our institutional official, who is Albert Titus, for his signature. And usually he gets those back to me either same day or next day. But sometimes it might take me a little bit longer. If you don't get it within a few days and you've already submitted your HRP 907, definitely ping me and I can make sure that we got it. But usually those are signed off within a day or two. I also then am awaiting a signature from the reliance agreement from the other IRB. So I need a fully executed reliance agreement. So once our institutional official signs off on it, it needs to go back to the other institution and they need to sign off it. Sometimes they sign it first, but in general, usually they'll send it to us for a signature and then follow it up with a signature from there. So I'm also going to await for a fully executed copy of that. I also look for the study to make sure that it's in Click. If it's not in Click, then I'm also not sending your documents back because, again, we have certain responsibilities that we need to do before that study gets approved. Those responsibilities mainly being the COI review and the review of everybody's training record. So until you enter the study in Click, I can't document that I've done that because that's where that's the system where we use to document that COI review has taken place and that we've also reviewed people's records. And like I said, on all the reliance agreements that we sign, that's our responsibility. So I can't sign off on it or send a signed off copy until I've done that. And again, like I said, also awaiting a receipt of the 907. And once all that's taken care of, then we send the information back to you.
Right. And Rich is very good about letting me know. It's like if somebody approaches him, it's like about getting a reliance agreement, it's like he will double back with me and say, is this in CSR? Where's things stand? But when it comes through CSR, just know that I will start these documents and get them going for you, as well as start that IRB submission.
Yeah, if you have a clinical study, sometimes I do get emails, hey, sign off on this reliance agreement. Sometimes I get reliance agreements and I will go back to Kim and say, because she usually institutes the whole process. If somebody else is doing it, I question whether it's ever gone through clinical study registration. We'll send it back to her.
Yeah. And he's very good about that. Okay, so once I get that HRP 907 back, then I am going to send that back to Rich, excuse me, and he is going to then release the fully executed 907, which bears his signature as well as the PI signature, and he's going to give me that partially executed reliance agreement that is signed by Dr. Titus. And again, what Rich said, he is not going to release either of those until he has that 907 back. And so we are going to upload that into the IRB submission that we have started. And the only thing that you're going to have to do at that point is go into Click IRB, and you will download the partially executed reliance agreement, have that signed by the commercial IRB representative, and then re-upload the fully executed reliance agreement. And again, that needs to be fully executed for that reliance to actually be established. Okay.
Right. So as a note, so I oversee the IRB, but I'm not part of the IRB. So when they're asking for items in Click, that's not me asking. That's your IRB reviewer asking for those items. Like they're going to be looking for the fully executed reliance agreement. So once, I have our institutional official sign off on it, I'm going to give it back to you. And it's your responsibility to get the other IRB to sign off on it. And the IRB reviewers are going to look for a fully executed copy. So even though the partially executed copy may be uploaded, they're going to be looking for a reliance agreement with signatures on both of those, on both lines, both our the UB line and the external IRB line. So, and again, when the IRB asks you for documents or ask you for anything, make sure you upload it into Click. Some people send it to me and assume I sent it to the IRB. Again, I am not part of the IRB. I cannot modify your study or add documents to your study. You can send them to me, and it's a good thing, to send, them both ways. But again, if a document is needed, it needs to go into Click because Click is our file for your study.
Okay. So, so like I say, we are going to enter everything into the IRB submission based on what you have put into the CSR form. And then we're going to be turning the study over to the study team At that point in time, CSR, when you get that completion email that says, we're done, we don't usually go back to anything with CSR. So you will get the thing to say that we have uploaded your 907, we have uploaded your partially executed, and now it's your turn. One of the things, especially with when we get into some of the lesser known commercial IRBs, which has happened, and particularly some of the institutional, they will not be in that pre-established drop-down list for the available external IRBs. And then it becomes, how do I put that in? Again, put it into CSR, tell me who the IRB is, because I communicate with Rich and Research Information Systems and make sure that it gets into there. So it is one of those ones that we can choose.
Yeah, it would have been nice if it was an all-inclusive list, but we kind of populate that list. So yeah, if you go through, if you're trying to enter your study and you go to the drop-down IRB and you can't find your IRB anywhere, just call one of us, either Kim or myself, and we can have it added to that list.
And usually if that's the case, then you haven't properly identified in CSR that you're using that IRB, or things have changed. So again, just let us know, and we can get things added as need be. But you should be identifying that in the CSR form at the outset. There are times through a study where, we thought we were going to be using Advera, and they've changed their mind and they're going to be using WCG. I can help facilitate those documents in the same manner that we do, excuse me, when it originally goes through CSR. But just know that what I'm going to be doing is basically what has been placed in CSR. Okay. So I think we've kind of gone over what this is.
Yep, so this just kind of summarizes what we've already talked about. One of the things I'll note is human subjects research training can sometimes hold up studies. Again, even when we're seating review, if people don't have all of their training completed, we're not going to approve the study to go forward, even though the other IRB holds the approval. And that's a understanding between IRBs. That's part of the reliance agreement. And the same thing goes with conflict of interest review. You need to make sure that you have an annual disclosure here at UB so that we can do a conflict of interest review. There are so many studies that get held up by those two items.
And I will say that's part of our central study registration review. So we look at the people that you have put as your study staff, and we will check to ensure that they have an annual disclosure on file. And we'll let you know at the outset during CSR processing that, Dr. A does not have his annual disclosure on file, so that early in the process that needs to happen, because when it gets into the IRB in that stage of review, then it will hold it up if he has not completed that. But up front, so that we can get things moving along on the quicker side, to say, what, this is going to hold it up. Dr. A has not done his annual disclosure, so you need to nag on him to get it done so things aren't held up.
Yeah, I might add some of the more common commercial IRBs like Advera and WCG do have their own conflict of interest review process, and we do sometimes see that review to them. But that being said, there have been times when I've done COI review on companies that have their own policies and have found a conflict that they don't have managed, and I will send an email to them notifying them that there's a potential conflict. So,
excellent. Okay. So we're going to move on a little bit. We've kind of talked about the use of the commercials. There are some slight differences with the non-commercial, the not-for-profits, the foundations or other universities. And so we're going to move on there. We do everything pretty much the same as far as getting things together, noting that it's going to be using using another IRB, another institution's IRB, and I don't know why this is this way. But what we'll do is a lot of times this is where I have to add somebody, an institution to the drop-down list. What I do on the background also is look to see if they are part of Smart IRB, in which case I will notify Rich just as a point of, I mean, he has, obviously we'll check that out, but usually what I will do is let him know who the IRB point of contact is at the other institution. Say they are using Mayo Jacksonville, you know, and this is the IRB. They're going to be using their IRB as IRB of record, and here's the contact information. And then Rich will take it from there.
Yes, I got to go through this. So again, a lot of this is the same as commercial IRBs. So, you know, your study has to be entered into UB Click and updated as you make modifications. Again, the training and the COI are done by us, so we need to make sure that that's all taking place. So that is pretty much the same as the commercial IRB. So with the process for using other institution IRBs, it's kind of a little less organized in some ways than with the commercial IRBs, in that it takes a little bit more work on the part of both IRBs to get reliance agreements together. So when somebody comes to me and wants to use another institutional IRB, the first thing I'm going to tell them is have that site PI go and contact their IRB and ask them if they're willing to take on review for the University at Buffalo, and then get that person, the person from their IRB, in touch with me to execute the reliance agreement. The reason for that is because, like the University of Buffalo, many other institutions have thousands of studies going forward. And if I just give an IRB contact to another institution and say, you know, we want to rely on them, and I go to that person, they're going to say, well, whose study is this? You know, I haven't talked to them about this. They haven't talked to me about this. You know, I'm not familiar with the study. Don't know if we can rely on it. So if those contacts are made in advance, and then I'm talking to an IRB representative from another IRB that's familiar with the study, we can get things in place much quicker than kind of going back and forth and sending, well, you know, your PI is this person, you may want to go talk to them and then come back to me. So that's usually my first thing. And that goes even if we're serving as the reviewing IRB. Always have the site PIs contact their IRBs so that their IRB person knows what study they're talking about and are willing to, and know who to get me to execute the reliance agreement.
Okay. So, I don't know, Rich, do you want to take this?
Yep, I can take this. So when we seed review, and this is for any study, whether it be commercial or another institution, you need to follow the rules and regulations of that IRB. They approve you according to their regulations and their policies may be slightly different than our universities. But that's what we're signing off on. A single IRB means that you follow whatever they approve. We may have approved it. We may not have approved it if it had been reviewed here, but that doesn't matter. So don't, come to our IRB and ask, can I do this? According to the study, I'm not quite sure, or I'd like to do this, and it's been approved on previous studies. Any questions on approval of your project need to go to the reviewing IRB, and they will answer those questions. So, again, like I said, once we seed review, I'm of the belief that I don't want to get involved with it unless the other IRB is asking for it. I think that's the way it should be. Other IRBs sometimes are not like that. They will ask for a local context review. There are certain IRBs that I deal with that I'm not going to name names, that I think are problematic with the single IRB process, because they come back to me and ask me to review the study for all kinds of things, local context, this, that, and the other thing, and get back to them. To me, that's dual review. I personally don't believe in it. But if I'm going to sign off on a reliance agreement that requires me to do that, then that has to be done. But anyway, you need to follow what they approved, not necessarily what UB would have approved.
Okay, and just kind of, because we had this question come in to us yesterday, and just so once that initial seed has happened and that reliance agreement is fully executed, you are running your study, and now an amendment comes into play, the IRB of record, so let's say WCG, once they approve that amendment, then you are good to go. You're going to upload all of the approved documents for that amendment that they have done into our instance of Click IRB. And usually within about 14 days, you'll get that acknowledgement that our IRB has acknowledged that an amendment has happened. But you are good to go as far as instituting the changes that amendment has happened. Again, this is after the initial reliance has been established. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I can add to that. Yeah, we don't like an amendment. If the other IRB approves it, you're obligated to put it into our Click submission system, but you don't need to wait for us to approve that amendment. It's already been approved by the reviewing IRB. You can go ahead and follow that amendment. You just need to get it into our system. Our system, it's kind of one of those quirks. You can't just update it. It has to be kind of acknowledged by our IRB, but it doesn't need to be approved by our IRB before you can follow it, if that makes sense. I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, I was just about to read.
I see, should external IRB approval documents get posted to the study file? Also, yes, our IRB is going to look for those approval documents before they approve the initial approval here at the site. And they're going to want to see approval letters from the other IRB. Other question I have is, does ECMC have to go through UBIRB for external institution? The answer is yes. ECMC, Kaleida, UBMD studies are all under the blanket of the UBIRB. So anytime you're doing a study from any one of those entities, UBIRB is your IRB of record, and we're the ones who need to sign off on the reliance agreements.
Okay. Are there any other questions that we can answer? Michelle, is there anything else that's coming through the chat?
No, those were the last two.
Yeah, so we try and make the process as simple as possible. We're not there to be hurdles. Probably unlike what you might think, the IRB is here to facilitate your research and not to hurt it. And like I said, when we ask for stuff, it's for a reason. We don't just ask for items just out of curiosity. So if I ask you a question, or if the IRB asks you a question, please follow it, because that will speed your approval up. And again, like I said, make sure that your study personnel have their training records in place, and they have their COI annual disclosures on file, because I see those hold up lots of studies.
Right. And just kind of going back a little bit to those amendments, I just want to say, if your amendment has changed your calendar, your procedures that are happening for study visits, if it has changed your budget, just make sure that has gone through Roseanne. Usually you will have had to have put in a contract amendment. Again, we can kind of help with that. But just one of the other things to let you know, we get, we get a daily report in Encore, from Click into Encore, that says when things are approved, acknowledged, when there's amendments, when there's an X update, all of those things. So in order to keep Encore the most current, we do ask that you get the X update information into Click IRB as soon as you can. Okay. Well, I don't have anything else, Rich.
No, that's all I have. I hope this clears things up for everybody, helps everybody to get.
Sure.
Oh, yep.
Can you hear me? Okay. So in the library, there's the HRP 907 for the commercial IRB, and that gets signed and uploaded into the study so that recognizes the reliance agreement. If there is an external IRB, what how does the reliance agreement look, and what gets uploaded into Click or into the study then?
So one of the things I want to point out, and I should have mentioned this earlier, is when we rely on an external IRB, they also will have their own processes. So like I said, a reliance agreement is not approval. Each institution or each IRB will have their own processes. So you may have to fill out a totally different study protocol to get approval through another IRB. They have their own forms and ask questions for their own reasons. So one of the things I want to point out, and I should have pointed this out earlier, is when we're relying on an external IRB, you do not need to fill out our study templates or anything like that. You would take your directions on how to actually get approved from the other IRB. And those are the templates that would get uploaded to our Click file. So we're not going to ask you to fill out our 503 after you've already filled out somebody else's study protocol. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, it does. So, but if we receive something like whatever the external IRB sends that's not our template, we take that document and upload whatever they send us, we upload that into our study?
Yes.
Right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, anything that's relevant to our site. You don't need to upload the whole file. We don't need to see, any documents that aren't relevant to our site. But in general, we're going to want to see the protocol that you're performing at the university. So our process is kind of like if we were the reviewing IRB, we have the full study protocol, which is what you would fill out. That's the general protocol. And then for each site, we have them fill out a shortened protocol that just states the differences between the main protocol and the other site. And so that's how we do it. So we don't have the other site fill out our entire 503. We just have them fill out the short 508, which tells the differences of what they're doing at their specific site. Other IRBs, like I say, each have their own process and their own forms, but we just want to see the relevant documents to our site so that if we need to take a look at your study, we know exactly what you're doing here at UB.
Okay.
And one thing I just wanted to be sure to, because is that the HRP 907 is not your reliance agreement.
No.
Right.
That is just basically, I want to say it's like the mini contract between the IRB and the PI.
Yeah, and that's the UB IRB and the PI.
Correct. And so those, like I say, I will always, between CB and I, who's the other person that does all the commercials, we will always start the 907, get the PI signature, send that to Rich for his signature while he is getting the actual reliance agreement partially executed by Albert Titus. And both of those documents, so the fully executed 907 and the partially executed reliance agreement, will be uploaded into that that instance of, or that submission that we have noted as your IRB number. And then you're going to go in and get that partially executed reliance agreement, have it signed by the commercial IRB or the other IRB, and re-upload it along with all of your approved documents. Okay.
Okay. And I'm really sorry. So the reliance agreement, it will know that it's fully executed if it has both signatures.
Right.
Both Albert's signature as well as WCG's representative or Advera's representative or from the other institution, so
Okay.
those two signatures make it fully executed.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and that goes for any agreement, even in Smart IRB. Even though Smart IRB is a approved reliance agreement, everybody requires a letter of acknowledgement that's signed by both IRBs. I haven't had a single IRB in Smart IRB that doesn't require a letter of acknowledgement with both signatures. The only way we get around that in Smart IRB is sometimes we use what's called the online platform. Smart IRB has an online platform that basically we can use in lieu of signed documents. So how that works is basically the person at the lead site would initiate a request to another site like UB, asking us if we would cede review to them. That comes from their institutional official to me. Then I approve that and say, okay, we're willing to rely on such and such a site. It goes back to them. They then will do the review and say it's eligible for reliance. It comes back to me again saying, they approved it. Are we going to execute a final reliance agreement? I click on that. They acknowledge it. And then that will issue a letter of determination within that online system that we will use in lieu of a signed agreement.
Okay, and that's
And if you use
exactly,
that,
yeah, that's exactly what I have as a smart IRB document, but it has
yeah.
like,
Mhm.
and I didn't know if that was if there was a different document that I should have with actual like signatures because it was done online. So that's where I just wanted to make
Yeah, if it's
sure.
online, like I said, you can upload that letter of determination. It's available in the Smart IRB online
Yeah,
file,
PDF, and that should go
and
into
upload
our
that.
study.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes my reviewers will come back to me and ask me, "Hey, I see this. Is this the reliance agreement? Doesn't it need to be signed?" And I'll answer them no if it's a letter of
Okay, that's exactly was my question, was a smart IRB. Thank you very, very much.
Sure.
Mary, was your question answered about the consent forms?
No,
Okay.
my question is do we still have to use the IRB format or can we use the central IRB format consent?
You would use the central IRB's consent form. So there's certain items in that consent form that you need to modify. Like contact information obviously has to be for your site specifically, and then also usually injury language would need to be UB's injury language. But basically, you would be using their consent forms.
And then is there some place where these specific statements are available or we just go through the consent template and pull them out?
Yeah, it's on our consent template. So you would just grab the injury language from our consent template.
And then there's one more question. May I ask if there's any need for modification in IRB, then which entity is going to approve the modification?
So if you're making a modification to a study, the reviewing IRB is the IRB that approves your modification. So if we ceded review to say Advera, you would submit your modification to Advera, and they would be the reviewing IRB who would approve that modification. Like I said, you still need to upload that change into the UB Click system once it's approved. But we don't do approval. We just do acknowledgement. So once it gets approved by the other IRB, you're ready to go with that modification.
And you're going to enter it into our instance of IRB as an X update.
Right.
And then Mary has one more question.
Yeah, so this is real recent. I have a study right now that's outside our IRB. I believe it's Sterling. And we didn't fully execute the reliance agreement because both sides have the smart IRB and the acknowledgement was done. But when I went to put the study into the IRB, they wouldn't approve it till I uploaded a fully executed reliance agreement. They weren't taking this other document. They wanted the fully, it was holding up the study. They wouldn't approve it till I uploaded the fully executed reliance agreement.
And from what IRB is that?
It was from I believe it's Sterling.
Sterling,
Is that?
okay.
Yeah, and I actually got an email that says, "Oh, we both have smart IRB, so we signed off on that other, the agreement, and so the reliance agreement didn't need to be fully executed. But when I went for review, the IRB wouldn't take it unless I had a fully."
What we have with all IRBs, regardless of whether they're in Smart IRB, we don't have like an automatic, okay, everybody's in Smart IRB, so we approve Reliance. We have a study-specific agreement. So anytime we have a study, even though it's approved by Smart IRB just makes it easy because everybody knows the regulations and the policies for Smart IRB, but we're still going to require a study-specific approval form. That's our way of kind of being the gatekeeper and making sure people just don't go to Sterling and say, hey, we're in Smart IRB, so you can approve our study. And then UB has no record of that study. So yes, we do need a study-specific letter of agreement or reliance agreement for each study. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I'm always available for questions. Rich is
Yeah,
obviously
so
all about, he's very, very good about getting back to people. And so if there's any other questions you think of later, please shout out and we'll get you an answer.
yeah, don't hesitate to shout out. Like I said, we try and make things easier for everybody. So if you have a question, don't sit on it. Ask me the question or ask him, and if we can't answer it, we'll get you to whoever can.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank
Thank you both for
everyone.
presenting.
And thanks for your
Everybody.
questions and thank you for your attention this morning. Take care.
Yeah. All right.